Francis Steinberg is a psychologist, an acupuncturist, and a martial artist. I am on dangerous ground. A manager once said that if someone was in emotional pain, Francis could use her psychology. If they were in physical pain, she could use her acupuncture. And if they were being in pain, she could use her martial arts. As if she weren't busy enough, she's now added the string of interactive learning designer to her bow, a skill for which I personally am grateful because it's made my writing come to life in an interactive guide to family therapy. Francis has also created the DSM lentil calendars as when the DSM came out, which is quite interesting, which is in your pack. Most of you also know her because she is the communication coordinator for both NZAFT and WNFAST. You probably received copious amounts of emails from her. Francis produced the ADHD video Getting It Right, created the interactive programs The Power of Once, The Curse of Competence, perhaps based too much on personal experience, Dumped RX, no personal experience, and Making Responsible Decisions About Drinking During Pregnancy, and is the author of the novel The Pocket Messiah and its accompanying storybook Tales from the Pocket Messiah. Together we have read numerous books, including Becoming Dragon and Positive Positioning, which inform her talk today. And if you think you're exhausted listening to all of this, you should try living with it. Her talk today is Conducting the Family Symphony, How Seizing the Baton Makes the Family More Harmonious. So I introduce with great pleasure Maestro Francis Steinberg.
So can everyone stand for a minute, please? Here. Yes, yes. Ready? Yes, yes. One more time. Yes, yes. Here. No, no, no. Ready? No, no, no. One more time. No, no, no. Good. Okay. This group right here. Yes, but. Ready? Try it. Yes, but. Right, one more time. Yes, but. And then my friends on the far side. Maybe. Maybe. Good, one more time. Maybe. Good. Everyone ready? Here we go. Conducting the Family Symphony, How Seizing the Baton Makes the Family More Harmonious, a poem. To see if the title works as a metaphor strong and true, we should begin by seeing just what does a conductor do.
What a conductor does. He starts off the orchestra like this.
Very smart human being, and is a very organized, disciplined person. Then comfort to lead people will come immediately.
I think the word conductor is very significant because the idea of a current being actually passed from one sphere to another, from one element to another, is very important and very much part of the conductor's skill.
I think beating time is really the least of a conductor's job, really. Clearly you have to be responsible for setting the general pace and the feeling, but it's much more about shaping the sound and getting a certain sound out of it, a certain energy.
The magical moment of conducting, which is you go onto the stage, there's an orchestra sitting, they're all warming up and doing stuff, and I go on the podium, this little office of a conductor, or rather a cubicle, an open space cubicle, a low space, and in front of all that noise, you do a very small gesture, something like this, not very prompt, not very sophisticated, this, and suddenly out of the chaos, order.
Now, I had an amazing experience. I was 45 years old. I've been conducting for 20 years, and I suddenly had a realization. The conductor of an orchestra doesn't make a sound. My picture appears on the front of the CD. But the conductor doesn't make a sound. He depends for his power on his ability to make other people powerful. And that changed everything for me. It was totally life-changing. People in my orchestra came up to me and said, "Ben, what happened?" That's what happened. I realized my job was to awaken possibility in other people.
In the 1920s, Richard Strauss wrote 10 rules for conductors to follow. Some are sensible, some are thoughtful, others hard to swallow. Rule number 1 from Strauss. Remember that you are making music not to amuse yourself, but to please your audience. Rule number 4, never look at the trombones. It only encourages them. I must admit there have been some times with certain family members that I felt the same way. We don't have as much time today to have a similar 10 unfurled. Although in reducing them, I feel a little bit like Mel Brooks in the history of the world.
Lord, I shall give these laws unto thy people. Hear me! Oh, hear me! Oh, pay heed! The Lord Jehovah, has given unto you these 15
Rule number 1, seize the baton. In days not so long ago, in both the East and West, therapists had the idea that father always knew best. And not just dad, but teachers and the family doctor too. In fact, everyone in authority always knew just what to do. So therapists offered guidance, and then the family went on their way without ever expressing an opinion or really having their say. But nothing ever stays the same, and the world began to turn. Ideas of gender equality in minds began to burn. Philosophers started to emerge from their academic caves and towers, giving voice to postmodern ideas and deconstructing power. The same thing happened in conducting around a similar time. Dictatorial tyrants gave way to a more egalitarian climb.
I am a conductor. I'm here today to talk to you about trust. My job depends upon it. There has to be between me and the orchestra an unshakable bond of trust, born out of mutual respect, through which we can spin a musical narrative that we all believe in. Now, in the old days, conducting music making was less about trust and more, frankly, about coercion. Up to around about the Second World War, conductors were invariably dictators, these tyrannical figures who would rehearse not just the orchestra as a whole, but individuals within it, within an inch of their lives. And I'm happy to say now that the world's moved on, music's moved on with it, we now have a more democratic view and way of making music, a two-way street. I, as the conductor, have to come to the rehearsal with a cast-iron sense of the outer architecture of that music, within which there is then immense personal freedom for the members of the orchestra to shine.
Unfortunately, as a result of trying to be collaborative and fair, we've abandoned our responsibility and a lot of savoir-faire. We applaud not having answers, as if it's a virtue, not a vice. We've lost our capacity for creating interventions or giving sage advice. We've embraced having conversations and being ever-lentingly curious. But personally, the idea of not knowing makes me a bit furious. So if I go to my plumber or my doctor, I'd actually prefer them to know. I'd actually prefer them to have wisdom, and at the very least, I'd expect them to have the ability to know what's going on. If a practitioner takes a not knowing position with a family, is it because they truly don't know what to do or what to say, which is actually a little bit sad? Or is it that they do know but aren't sharing, which is even more deceptive than the practices they're looking to avoid? Despite a bucket full of good intentions, one problem will always be true, that a practitioner's simple presence will influence the family too. We need to find a balance between dictating and not saying, so we can again take responsibility to keep family issues from replaying. It's time to grasp the baton and seize professional pride of place, and realize that leading is not harmful or a disgrace.
I think maybe they felt they were taking part in a sort of large-scale chamber music. And this is the secret, to come from within an orchestra, to lead them from inside, rather than dictate from outside.
It's obviously important not to bully or dominate, but authoritative and authoritarian we shouldn't both equate. Our clients need our knowledge, our judgment, and our skill. We can assert our expertise without bending them to our will. And you don't need to share the podium with other professionals by your side. One clear vision and one strong hand keeps the message clarified. There was a piece written by Mark Applebaum, who you'll meet in a minute, that to me is the essence of doing co-therapy. It's called A Piece for Three Conductors and No Orchestra. Number 2, know the score, even better than the musicians. For a conductor to be effective, they must dissect the piece entire and study every nuance and note if they want the players inspired. The more they understand the score, the more the musicians can excel. A conductor's attention to detail is what allows everyone to do well. As practitioners working with families, we often skip this boring part and think we can replace it with an empty mind and caring heart. But we need to be as meticulous in uncovering structure and issues so that problems can be resolved without continuing fights and tissues. So when a conductor begins a piece, they take the score and they study every single element of it. And we personally recommend doing the same thing in our interactive guide to family therapy and some of our books. We've put together what we call a family therapy outline so that you can dissect every element of the underlying issue, the presenting problem, what's going on with the dynamics of the family. Because if you don't know this, how can you lead them? How can you deal with them? How can you interact with them? It's just really, really important. We also need to know what to do with the information once collected, so the family can be competently advised, empowered, or directed. We need to re-embrace technique, and the most optimal place to start would be to look at the tools you need for your craft and art. And while the flashier ones appeal, use your power of will to show restraint and cherish the humble, basic skill. As the saying goes, you have to walk before you can run. Complexity of skill is only reached by mastering simple ones.
So here we have this piece of music by Beethoven, and my problem with it is it's boring. I mean, you would... It's Beethoven. How can you say that? No, well, I know, it's very familiar to me. I had to practice it as a kid, and I'm really sick of it. So what I might like to try to do is to change it, to transform it in some ways, to personalize it. So I might take the opening like this idea, and then I might substitute, and then I might improvise on that melody that goes forward from there.
I'm just going to be creative and I'm going to do what I need. The reason that Mark Applebaum could do what he did with that piece is because he had practiced it as a child. You can't get creative with things you don't know. That's just doing something. You need each level of skill in order to excel and then become creative. So you need to study your profession and analyze your art. Examine every skill you use, take each of them apart. So let's sort of look at this. So can someone give me a skill that you use when you work with a family? Just any skill.
Listening.
Listening. Okay, so listening is a skill. What I'd like to know is, what is a skill you use when you're listening? Observing. Fantastic. So what is a skill when you use when you're observing someone? Paying attention. So what is a skill you use when you're paying attention?
Look at them.
What?
Looking at them.
Looking at them. Okay, so you've got where I'm going, right? So the idea is, it's not good enough to say, oh, well, I do whatever, the miracle question. What I'd like to know is, what do you need to know to do that? And what do you need to know to do that? And what do you need to do to know that? In all honesty, and he'll get very embarrassed, but Rick Whiteside is actually my model for all of this. Because in 22 years of knowing him, I cannot think of a day when he didn't work on dissecting some aspect of his professional art. I mean, seriously, not a day. And we need to look at that. We need to say, okay, I'm going to do this. But what are we really studying? What are we really getting into? How do we really know how to do that? And the more we can take it apart, the more creative we can eventually get. Of course, one skill is not enough to put your house in order. If all you have is the DSM, everything looks like a disorder. You need a range of tools for the complexities of work to ensure that you can meet every circumstance and quirk. But accumulating skills should not be an end unto itself. You need to understand techniques, not gather trophies on a shelf. Before you use a skill, you should know it through and through. How to use it, when it works, in which context, and with who. So in choosing which techniques to use, select those that will succeed. Valuing philosophy over outcome is a foolish choice indeed. A true maestro constantly seeks to refine, but competence is only a start. They also pursue excellence in all aspects of their art. Each conductor knows it's vital to also find your unique voice. Innovation, not replication, is an important choice. While you should deepen and expand your skills and seek excellence in technique, you also need to cultivate a thumbprint quite unique.
The same piece played by 5 outstanding conductors would give you 5 different paintings. They may use the same brushes, the same paints, and the same canvas, but how they spread the paint and how they present the color is what brings out the differences in the conductors.
So ponder this one question and see if it holds true. How would anyone reading about your work tell it was done by you? We certainly would have no doubt reading a session, even if the therapist's name was not on it, if it was deleted, whether it was being conducted by Satir, Mnuchin, or Whittaker, right? Those are very unique voices, and we need to look for that in ourselves. We need to acquire these skills, but then look at, who am I? What are my strengths? What can I bring to this? How can I flavor it? Rule number 3, temper precision with joy and passion. Knowledge and technique are important, but to really make the grade, the conductor knows that pieces soar when in the role of fool they're played. Traditionally, fools like conductors were men, usually from the lower rank. Their marginalized existence gave them freedom to be frank. Most cultures have their wise fools, whose comical insight hold tradition and custom to a brighter light. Heyokas always oppose the norm. They work as a contrary. Kosharis remind us of our greed. Tricksters make us wary. Jesters often had the ears of the lords and kings. Clowns remind us to find joy in the least of things. In addition to the savvy fools, there are also those less wise who remind us that we can succeed without either brains or size. So the quote is, come the millennium month 12, in the home of the greatest power, the village idiot will come forth to be acclaimed the leader. Sorry. So what good is playing the fool? What purpose can it serve? For one thing, it brings joy to life and fills our souls with verve. Humor puts all the fun into profundity and teaches us that there's not much difference between acting comic or cosmically.
What would you say show this, to senior management, people get annoyed. You come to work, how come you're so happy? Something must be wrong. But he's spreading happiness. And I think happiness, the important thing is this happiness does not come from only his own story and his joy of music. The joy is about enabling other people's stories to be heard at the same time.
There is no shortage of trauma or sadness in our path. Joy allows you to deal with it using a skip and a small laugh. So Sigmund Freud said that wit is the denial of suffering. And I don't think he meant it was the denial of its existence, just a denying the hold that it has to have on us. Along with joy comes passion for your clients and your profession. It will help you regain pleasure for each family and each session.
He was not trying to say, look at me, I'm having a wonderful time, but he just couldn't prevent it. It was as natural to him as swimming. And he had this extraordinary ability to make the players go along with that rhythmical current.
Finishing up with a family. Nietzsche said, almost every vocation is chosen and entered upon as a means to a purpose, but is ultimately continued as a final purpose in itself. So what I'd like to know is, why did you choose your profession? There's some students here and you're just starting, and why did you choose it? And for those of you who are further along, right, why are you in it now? Have you evolved, stagnated, regressed, right? I mean, why are you doing what you're doing? We have to find that feeling at the end of the session. So to keep your focus and dedication from falling into a rut or chasm, you need to embrace both passion and enthusiasm.
Do you know what Marx wrote at the end of every piece he wrote? For the glory of God. That's what that says. That says, do you know the word enthusiasm? What that means? What does it really mean? Yes, but what is the real etymological meaning? Theo is God. Enthusiastic means full of God. So we should only grade people on their enthusiasm. That's all. There is nothing else worth grading them on.
Rule number 4. Balance the players. When deciding what stance would work with the family mob, you need to act like a conductor successfully doing their job. Just as they balance the violins, the percussion, and the oboe, and keep the orchestra silent during someone's special solo, you need to adjust the score to fit the family's composition, empowering all the players while maintaining your position. Sometimes the family plays a simple tune, other times a symphony. You need to ensure that all have a voice, but on a basic plan agree. They don't all have to play the same notes. Each has a different sound, but find a way to weave their stories into some common ground. Another way to balance the players and know just what to do is by understanding the cooperation style the family gives to you. Some members are highly cooperative. They talk openly and say, yes, yes. They take on board your suggestions and rarely second guess. Other family members always just say no. They glower and rant and oppose everything until it's time to go. Most families vacillate between cooperation high and no. Maybe is their byword, depending on how the sessions flow. Other members come to see you, disempowered and distressed, complaining that their entire life is a hopeless mess. All interactions grind into an unproductive rut, and any ideas that you suggest, they meet with a yes, but. It's important to understand that no response is good or bad. They could even be adaptive based on what experiences they've had. So if you're looking at cooperation and you're looking at people who always say yes, that can be a very positive thing in that they're just a pleasant, cooperative person, right? They want the interaction to go smoothly, they respect you, they value you, they want things to go well, and so they're happy to go along with things. That's the positive side of saying yes. But what about some of our teenagers, for instance, who only say yes because they're afraid no one else will like them? They dress how everyone dresses. They do what everyone does for them. So someone says, you want to come steal a car? And they go, yes. That's possibly not as good an idea. The same thing's true with saying no. It's not always bad when someone refuses to cooperate. I mean, sometimes there are people who are just out there to make your life miserable, and I can accept that fact. And as a matter of fact, in terms of opposition, if you look at the government system in New Zealand, right, we have the government, and for those of you who live there, what are the other parties called? The opposition. And that's how they behave. So if one party says yes, the other has to say no. They're required to do it. The other time that saying no might be a really valid thing to do is after someone has had a history of abuse. You see this all the time. If someone has a child, let's say, has a history of abuse, they go to school, a teacher asks them to get out a book. They go, if I get out this book, it's going to feel just like that abuse situation. Because isn't that what abuse is? Someone is doing something to you and you don't have the right to say no. But here I am in school and it's safe and it feels good and the teacher says get out your book and I can go no, 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 right? And it's a valid, adaptable thing to do because it's helping them reaffirm their personhood. And so it's not that saying yes is good and saying no is bad. People usually have some very good reasons for doing one or the other. Once you know the cooperation pattern that someone is giving you, select a stance that will make the outcome true. You can essentially choose between 4 different options, but because of time today, I'm going to stress 2 basic ones for adoption. In a directive stance, you make suggestions without any hesitations. You give the family advice and create interventions.
What is more effective if you'll need to...
I think once it's really good, that way it's family working together rather than an outside therapist coming in. But if it's really good together saying, okay, so if more than 3 boys come over, more than twice a week, then we're going to take away your cell phone for a month.
you can see that you can start by an orchestra with a finger. Now what does Riccardo Muti do? He does something like this. And then sort of. So not only the instruction is clear, but also the sanction. What will happen if you don't do it? I tell you. So, does it work? Yes, it works. To a certain point. When Muti is asked why do you conduct like this, he says, I'm responsible. Responsible in front of him. Now, he doesn't really mean him, he means Mozart, which is like the third seat from the center.
Taking a non-directive stance creates and allows collaborations, encouraging the family to take control and find their own variations.
What's different? Do you see the eyes? Closed. Do you see the hands? She says, yes, the worst damage I can do to my orchestra is to give them a clear instruction, because that would prevent the ensemble, the listening to each other that's needed for an orchestra. Now that's great. What about the eyes? Why are the eyes closed? Yeah? There's a wonderful story about Kaya conducting in London. And he cues in a flute player like this. The guy has no idea what to do. I asked her with all due respect, when should I start? What do you think Kara's reply was? When should I start? Oh yeah. He says, you start when you can't stand it anymore.
It's important to understand that both stances have value and reason. One can be directive or collaborative, depending on the season. We shouldn't decide how we're going to act before we even meet the family, based on our personal prejudices or commitment to a philosophy. We have to value all paths, authoritative and those that are not. People can flourish under direction or get confused if no one fills that spot. Okay, so we're going to go, you don't have to get up, okay? But what you do need to do is clap, right? So we'll practice first. So everybody ready? Okay. So we're going to try, but you've got it, right? It's not complicated, right? So this time I'm going to give you a nice, clear direction. Don't clap yet. When I go, I want everyone to clap. Ready? Close. Ready? Once more. Beautiful, right? Now that's directive, right? And we need directive at times of crisis. We need directive at times when people need that kind of advice, when people are looking to us for that kind of advice. And then, it really, as you saw at the end of the piece that we did in the very beginning, right? There's collaborative. So now, I'm going to give you a nice collaborative, and you clap when you think it's the right time. Ready? So it's okay, right? Because different things happened. People might feel that they were able to make their own decision there as to when they wanted to clap. And so each of them is valuable. It's not that one is necessary and the other one isn't. It's that we have to know what to do with it. So accept that by being flexible and appropriately adjusting our stance, we can ensure a customized, client-centered dance. Being directive is most useful for people who say, yes, yes, when because of respect, practicality, or crisis, they look to you for success. Of course, that means you need some suggestions that are useful and not daft, which is all the more reason to stay at the top of your craft. It's also important that you shouldn't abuse the power that they give to you, and to ensure that they can look after themselves before your time is through. So when we talk about being directive, one of the most important things we need to do is to work hard enough with our clients and to give them the help that they need, so by the end of their work with us, they can do it on their own. Let's go back. Being directive never works for people who say no. You have to redirect or find their hooks if they are going to grow. For families who vacillate between saying yes and no, conditionally cooperating depending on how the sessions go, whatever the reason for their shift, the pathway forward is clear. You need to stay flexible as their issues appear. So sometimes directive and helpful is how you need to be, abandoning that stance as they act less cooperatively. The yes but family members really don't mean to perturb. It's just that their life has often been traumatic and disturbed. They have learned to be helpless. They don't see a way out. So any ideas they reject without a doubt. To help them get on the path to flexibility and success, you need to help them realize that life isn't a permanent mess. Turn over the healing process to them, and soon you will see that gaining control of that situation helps the person soon break free. If you decide you have to make a constructive suggestion or two, keep your choices restricted and don't seek ideas new. So if you'd like to know more about all of this, about all of this, then you can either look at our positive positioning book or the interactive guide, or go to Rick's talk. Is doing a little mini thing on these stances if you want to know more about it. Okay, rule number 5. Conduct each session as if it were a matter of life or death. We should never take our work lightly or not give it complete attention, because the families who come to us are distressed or in a lot of dissension. So if you remember Strauss, the one with the rules, right? Even he wasn't beyond getting a little bit bored.
There were 2 Strausses as a conductor. The one who was interested and the one who was not interested. And very often you had the feeling that he was just serving time or earning his fee and waiting for the card game that came after the performance.
And when was the last time you felt like that? During a session. Okay. Act as if your session is the most sacred, significant task on earth. We should see our work as sacred, each word filled with purpose and worth. So it's asking the difference between, or Mark Twain is saying, the difference between a great word and one that is adequate is the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. So one of the things you want to ask yourself is, in terms of the words that you use with a family, how would you change which words you use and how you conducted your time with them if the person you valued most in the world was watching you work right then. Critical to the process is mindfulness and intent, a state of high awareness, focus that is meant. Even the most mundane act glows when intent is infused there. The basic becomes the magical if intent is in the air. The first step in the process is to have a goal in mind. You have to know the end point of where your actions wind. Next, articulate the steps you need to reach the final target. Don't wander off task or waver with indecision or regret.
There are two people on the stage with you here. You think there's just one person sitting here? There are two people. One of them is trying to play the violin. The other is whispering in your ear. Practice it out. Do you know how many people play this piece better than you do? Remember that passage you missed it the last time? You're going to miss it again. This is the moment. This is the most important moment right now, which is we are about contribution. That's what our job is. It's not about impressing people. It's not about getting the next job. It's about contributing something. Everybody was clear that you contributed passion to the people in this room. Right? Did you do it better than the next finalist? Or did you do it better than another candidate? I don't know, I don't care. Because in contribution there is no better.
If your intent is strong, all outcomes will improve, and wonder will permeate each and every move. But if you find yourself wondering how to cultivate intent, when overworked and hassled is how your days are spent, when colleagues and paperwork are dominating you, and you're feeling just a little bit like the cook named Wu. This is out of my Tales from the Pocket Messiah. There once was a cook named Wu. He had a very small restaurant where people who were traveling on a country road could stop to eat. Wu was a master of qi, of energy. Every day he would practice his gong fu, his qigong, breathing, and his tai chi movements. Wu became very, very powerful. He took all of the energy he built up and sent it into his cooking. Every vegetable he chose, every piece of meat he selected was filled with all of the good qi he had gathered. Because Wu's power was strong, those who ate his food felt fit and happy. Some who were sick when they arrived at the restaurant became well after they had a meal. Wu's reputation soon spread. Travelers rushed to the inn, eager to eat Wu's food. Wu was happy that people liked his cooking and pleased that he could help his customers. Before long, there were so many people wanting to eat at Wu's restaurant that he had to spend most of his day cooking. He could not practice his breathing exercises or do his tai chi. His body became stiff from the lack of gong fu. His fingers began to cramp from long hours of chopping and slicing. There seemed to be so many people to feed, so much food to prepare. It was an endless blur of cutting, stirring, serving. Soon Wu's cooking began to suffer. People would grumble and complain. Some called him a fake. Fights broke out between diners, each accusing the other of receiving a better meal. Eventually, Wu's customers decreased and finally stopped coming. Wu never resumed his qigong, his gong fu, or his tai chi. He just sat on the bench at the front of his inn, waiting for customers who never came. So in order not to burn out, you have to cultivate the ability of putting the right amount on your plate. And if you feel yourself slipping, find a way to restore the passion and the purpose to keep you going more. If you're interested in anything more about all these different parts, we wrote a fable called The Coming Dragon that covers a lot of it in some way, which is what this image is from. I hope you've enjoyed this talk, the music and the journey, but all things come to an end, and it's time to say, Fini.